I keep hearing everybody talking about getting into the mind of the customer to write your ad copy. But for me, very few people explain how to do it in a sort of repeatable step-by-step fashion. So this is the process that I'm currently using that I find is pretty repeatable and it's not that difficult to do. And I feel like it gives you the 80/20 of the psychology aspect of writing ad copy. It's something I use with my clients all the time. So let's get into it. It's pretty simple. So just to get started, this is probably what most people do when they're new to ad management is they start out by going to the ad library and searching up the competitors' ads, copying the ad copy, bringing it into a Google Doc, modifying it to be for their client or their business. I don't think it's necessarily bad, but I think it's a fine way to start. But if it works, the problem I find is you often don't really know why. Was it because you had testimonials in that copy and not in the other? Or was it because of the hook that you used was particularly good? It's sort of all messed up because you didn't really create it. And sometimes when I work with clients that don't have very good competitors, there's nothing you can really reference or template from because no one's done a good job of it yet. So the question is, how do you build your own? So right now, the most effective tactic available, at least from what I see with Meta Ads buyers, is following Eugene Schwartz. So it's this gentleman over here. There are plenty of free courses or discussions about his work and his book, Breakthrough Advertising on YouTube. So I'll let you search those up. But one of his main key ideas is you need to start from existing demand. What do people already want? What desires do people already have? He mentions desires, and I understand there's both a desire or a problem that they want solved. So work backwards from there. So literally use your brain or AI to go ahead and review Reddit, YouTube comments, reviews on Trustpilot, Google reviews, etc., to try and find quotes from people talking about your product or service that you're advertising, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they used it for, why did they use it, what their experience was, and try to draw out big long list of like all the things that they actually wanted and all the things that they enjoyed getting out of that product or service. So, for example, one example could be just recently I was doing some ads for a Pilates studio, and one of the quotes came up with someone saying, "Oh, after 45, I just got tired of not being able to do things physically like I used to. But now that I go to this Pilates class, I feel really strong and nimble again, and I can do stuff like I used to." So you can see there, it's unlocking a desire that the market already had, which was feeling physically capable again, 45 plus. So that's an example. So you would write all of these things out in a big list. And then what I do is I order them in prevalence or intensity. So if this desire is more common than another, bring it to the top because there's no point focusing on desires or problems that aren't that common. Sometimes there's no data on this, so you just have to use your brain to kind of guess based on your judgment. But a lot of the time you'll be able to see based on how much data you're getting back. Next thing you need to do as well is when you have all these desires or problems mapped out, you need to map them to the benefits of your product or service. So for example, if we take, somebody wants to get back into sports again, but they feel intimidated and they want to feel confident again, then you might see that your particular sports training program has mentoring in there and one-on-one coaching to help people with intimidation and feeling that direction or feeling that motivation to get started again in a personalized one-to-one fashion. So you can see how the pain maps to the benefit. It's more clear to explain what those benefits are now that you have the problems or the desires mapped out. Cool. So the next stage here is I call it optional boostage. I used to think about this particular framework from Hotjar, which is a conversion rate optimization tool, but less so these days. But they had broken it down. When you want to improve conversion rate on websites, you want to identify three different things. There was the drivers, what made people come to the website in the first place. So what did they want? And then barriers, what actually stopped them from being able to take action? And then hooks, what actually persuaded them to go over the line. And they have a really good analogy here about barriers. They were saying if your product or service is a race, you kind of want to ask the people who finished what almost stopped you from finishing, and then use that in your copy. They might say, oh, this particular obstacle was really hard. So if you're doing conversion rate optimization, you can remove that obstacle. But likewise, in copy, if you find quotes that talk about barriers that people have or worries and concerns, you can preempt that a bit in your research by finding out what those are ahead of time. So in your big long list of all the different quotes, add these in as well if you find quotes that are related to key pains, key barriers, anything like that, that help them get over the line, that they had to overcome or help them overcome, that help them to overcome or help them to get over the line in the end. One of those things, whatever. Okay, now you get to the writing stage. So for writing the creative headlines, so the headlines that go on the ad units themselves, this is where Eugene Schwartz comes back. He's got his idea of the 5 levels of market awareness. Most people know this by this point, which is, you have your most aware and then you have your completely unaware. But his point is that you talk to each segment of the market in a different way. So you need to classify each one of your personas as being in one of these levels. Most of the time, if you're doing Facebook ads, you're probably doing it at problem aware and solution aware folks. So you sort of stick to these 2 levels. You probably have the nuance on your particular customer. But because of that, it also gives you a bit of direction on how you write those headlines. So if somebody is problem aware but not solution aware, his advice, and again, this is just the meta that people are using these days, is to identify and intensify the problem. So it could be, don't let aging hold you back 45 from living the life you want. If this was the ad for the Pilates studio, as an example, that would be leaning into and intensifying the problem. Whereas if it was a solution, you present, it mentions here, present the solution and introduce your product. So it might be saying, this studio helps women 45 feel nimble again through their program that does X, Y, and Z, that kind of thing. So use the key quotes that you put in that big long list that you created earlier, and then try to make headlines out of each of those quotes 12 words or less. You can't directly use those quotes to say like, oh, I feel young again or something like that. But you need to write them as your ad headline. So the underlying concept of that idea of what that quote was saying becomes the headline. Why 12 words or less? I don't know. By the way, quick CTA here. If you want some help with your ads account, particularly lead gen on Meta, I'll have a link below where you can get a free 25-minute Q&A call with me. Otherwise, I'll just keep going with this video. Okay, next, how do we write the ad unit headline? So we've written the creative headline, which is 12 words or less, based on the main pain points that you took out of your research that you rewrote into ad headlines. Now for the actual ad unit headlines, first thing to recognize is they don't actually show on Instagram. So you'll see on Instagram, it'll say just learn more. There'll be no headline and then it goes straight to the body text. So keep that in mind and we'll go into that in a second. But it does show on Facebook, so you need to write it. I personally like making it to the point so people know exactly what the offer is or the thing is or the main benefit. So one of those 2 things. What is the thing? Like, an 8-week voice coaching program with person, or the main benefit, unlock your vocal range with this 6-week professional coaching program, as an example. Not very good, but I'm just speaking them out off the top of my head. You get the idea. I find that's the 80-20. I don't try to complicate it with anything fancy by identifying the problem again or anything like this. Next, the ad unit description. So again, they don't show on Instagram, but it's kind of interesting to keep in mind the ocular mechanics of how people actually view the ads. So according to, 20 or so, 50 or so sources that I pulled into Notebook LM, what happens when people see a meta ad is often they'll look at the image first, obvious, but then they'll look at the primary text, which is your body text, to try and validate what is it that we're actually talking about here? Is this the right thing as I understood it? The headline is the anchor, what the thing is, which is why, again, the 80-20, in my opinion, is just making it to the point, saying what it is or what the main benefit is, and then the CTA, obviously. So I use this short description section as supporting information, things about guarantees, rating, time limitations, dates, that kind of stuff. We're almost done here. Now onto body copy itself. So I used to use a lot of ad body copy frameworks like AIDA, PAS, all that kind of stuff. I honestly haven't noticed a big difference between each of the frameworks over the years. I tried to identify whether, a certain framework was a reliable way to structure ads for a particular part of the funnel and all that kind of stuff. I found like personally it was a bit of a distraction. I don't know that any of it really pushed the lever. But what I do think is the essentials are obviously the most important part, which is going to be your hook or your headline, the offer, and the CTA. So I think about it now as we're dealing with TikTok brain. It is actually the case that 5% or less of people will actually read the rest of the body copy. So they're just going to read this first line 95% of the time. So that's why your hook and headline is the most important thing. So I would make sure that you use that to try to flag down your target audience and hook them into either the problem or the main benefit that you have written based on your research all the way back up here that you've done all the way back here based on for your particular persona. And then I simply write the offer straight after that, again, written in a way based on the quotes and the data that I know about their desires and pains and so on, and then offer a CTA. Click here to register your interest and so on. Sometimes I actually am able to combine those two together and you end up with relatively short body copy. But for each one, I know it's one of those three variables that's affecting its performance. So I know it's either the hook, it's either the way the offer was said, or it's the CTA. Rarely it's the CTA, it's usually the hook that makes the biggest difference. Which comes to my last point, using the meta ads breakdown report. So when you go into meta ads, this is just a mock-up. On your report view, you can go to columns, and then next to columns, it's got the breakdown report. So if you break down your ads by the body text, you can see which body text combination has the best engagement. So this can help you refine understanding who it is that is your better customer in terms of understanding what is it that people want and what's getting people interested. And it also gives you a little bit more information about which personas are performing better as well, because you're going to have a combination of persona and hook. In any case, I hope this is helpful. If you want a link to the document, just let me know in the comments. Otherwise, if you want some direct help, I've got the free Q&A. Otherwise, I've got a link to where you can get in touch with me below as well.